And we're live. Welcome, everyone, to another high vibe conversation. I'm your host, Shel Shabiro. With me today are Linda Vetrus Nichols, Jenny Landgren, Dorit Carlson, and Stina Marie. Today, we'll be talking all about PTSD and narcissism. If you're new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us for a high vibe conversation. We want to remind you that this is a safe space. We invite you to share with us as we talk through our life lessons and hold space for you to work through yours. What this means is that if at any point during our conversation, if you feel like you resonate with it, want to add to it, want to share your own experiences or insights, please feel free to share your comments in the chat, and we will do our best to respond to them either on the live directly or after. Again, this is whether you're watching now or on the replay. We would love to hear from you. On that same note, if you feel like you want to have a more private high vibe conversation with one of us, we invite you to schedule those individually using the link seen on your screen now. This is where you can choose one of us to have that conversation with, and you can select your person, and we will be happy to have that conversation with you. If you're not already connected with us, please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn so that we can get to know you better and have more of these high vibe conversations. And whether you are new here or coming back for more, we invite you to catch up on previous conversations by subscribing to the YouTube channel seen on your screen now. I will again share these links at the end of the conversation so you don't have to go looking for them. Without further ado, let's get into today's topic, PTSD and narcissism. Whew, Linda, I'm coming to you first today. What's coming up for you when we talk about this topic?
Thanks, Shel. Well, if you've ever encountered a narcissist, then most likely you're not just dealing with PTSD, you're dealing with complex PTSD. So that's a thing. And I've really appreciated learning so much from all of you about narcissism, and even seeing where everyone has a piece of their own narcissism, and it depends on the area you were raised in, all the more. I love it that we're pulling out of raising our kids from that place, if you will. And I love the work that the new moms are doing in this world when it comes to that, and really listening to their kids and helping their kids not to develop PTSD or complex PTSD. So, hats off to all of you, and Shel, even, I know you work really well with your niece and your nephew and the little one in your life through your friends. So thanks for all the work that you guys are doing to turn all that around.
Yeah, I think thank you, Linda. I think it's so important that the current generation and even the previous generation before us, we get to work through some of our PTSD and trauma and undo and relearn and rewire our brains and our bodies so that we don't continue that line down for our kids and our kids' kids and anyone else that we're connected to in our lives, really. So even as you said, I'm not a parent directly, but like I do jump in and parent when necessary with my nieces and nephews, and with other people's kids. And it's the same thing. Like, I'm overcoming my obstacles so that you don't have to go through any of that. The same way that we invite people on these conversations to share, with us as we're explaining and going through our own experiences, we're undoing and relearning. And I love that for us, and I love that for everybody else, because they will get to experience a better, less narcissistic version of themselves and step away from what they've known so far, right? So I think it's really important to speak on it from that perspective too. So thank you so much, Linda, for sharing. Jenny, I'm coming around to you now. What's coming up for you as we talk more about PTSD and narcissism?
Well, a big part of the narcissistic abuse is that they will attack you out of the blue accusing you for different things. And they do it so that you will be focused on yourself and blaming yourself and experiencing guilt and shame, trying to figure out, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? What can I do better? So for me, the trigger that's directly connected to the narcissism that I've experienced in my life is about things coming out of the blue. Emails, comments, people reaching out of the blue, where there's some connection to conflict, there's some connection to anger, or anything that I associate with my experiences with this narcissist. And that will directly trigger the shame and the guilt. So healing from that is, well, partly recognizing that, distancing yourself, like, this is the PTSD. This is my system wanting to protect me and keep me safe. So thank you, me, for wanting to keep me safe. And then filling that void with self-love. When it comes to shame and guilt, it's always about filling that void with self-love, which is self-care. And I'm recognizing with myself and my clients that it often begins with your body, because you soothe your body to soothe your mind. So for me, it's often about water. It's often about taking a really nice warm bath, or just tuning into, like, how can I love on myself right now? How can I self-care? And it's taken a couple of years to figure out what that looks like for me. But it's definitely something that insaturates the whole week. And it's not, I'm recognizing more and more that it's really not about just that moment when the PTSD hits me. It is about the way that I treat myself and the way that I soothe myself and the way that I keep myself energized throughout the week. That makes me really resilient to those situations. So that's the connection to narcissism that's coming in. Thank you, Shell.
Something you just said, Jenny, I love how you transformed self-love and self-care into verbs instead of like a thing. Like you treated it as an action to be done, to take care of yourself, to love on yourself, instead of to do it. Like it just is the action. And that subtle shift in thinking about the way that we go about it, instead of, this is a thing I need to now do. No, I'm doing it. I'm self-loving. I'm self-caring. You get to. And instead of, all right, it's just another task that maybe I'll get to, maybe I won't, maybe I'll be doing it, when I have time, maybe I'll make it a priority, maybe it'll fit in. You're taking away that maybe, and just doing the thing.
Yeah, so it's a relationship. It's the relationship to me. It's loving me. Definitely. And that's always there.
Well, I love you for sharing that, because it's a gentle reminder. I got the heart shape right. Yeah, right. Okay. It's a gentle reminder that we all need to be more present with ourselves instead of suppressing that and holding ourselves back. And yes, I can absolutely relate to some of the triggers that you mentioned of, when it comes to narcissism and PTSD, of like things coming out of the blue, and then feeling that immediate shame and guilt of, what did I do wrong? How did I fail in this situation? And then going through a whirlwind of emotions to try to mitigate that. And I see how far you've come to undo and relearn what self-love and self-care looks like for you. And so you're glowing right now on my screen. I don't know if everybody else can see it, but like, it just makes me so happy that you've healed yourself on your journey, and you're now in a place where you can see it more clearly and give yourself what you need.
Thank you. Thank you. As you're sharing, what's coming in is that it's really It's really about starting to give yourself first what you always longed for to receive from the other person. And that's like the flip, that's the shift of it. You were waiting to receive that. And the power is in you to give that to yourself. So making your relationship to yourself and your self-love priority and build from there.
So direct and to the point. Like I can't even add anything to that. So I'm not even going to try because Jenny said it so beautifully. Dorrit, what's coming up for you as we talk about PTSD and narcissism?
For me, I was just thinking that narcissists, we can meet them at any point in our lives, young or old or in between. It can be a teacher or a parent or a partner or whatever. But what I want to focus on is when they appear in school as a friend. Because that happened to my youngest daughter when she was around 11, 12 years old. A new girl came into class and she quickly became the most popular girl. Very cute, always like energetic, full of life, that kind of a girl. And of course, everyone wanted to be her friend, including my daughter. So what happened was that this particular girl, she would sometimes love on my daughter, like include her, come to my house, let's do this together. Oh, I got a horse, let's go to my home to me and we can ride. And the next day she treated her like she was air. She wouldn't even recognize her. She looked right through her, and that was like, my daughter was gutted. It was like, what did I do wrong? Why don't she like me? She come home crying. So when another day came around and she was loving on her again, she was like, okay, yeah, well, I'm in again. And this kept on going. And she added little things like she would criticize my daughter for her clothes, her food, whatever she could think of, like really poke at her with the little things over and over and over again, and until my daughter broke, and she responded with anger. And when my daughter was angry, the other girl would run to a teacher and say, hey, she's really bullying me, or she's angry with me, I'm afraid of her, or something like that. So I got the phone from the principal saying my daughter is a bully. And things like that kept going. And we had so many meetings with the school, and they couldn't take this little girl for anything. They sent letters home with her that the mama would just like tear them up and throw them into the fireplace. She didn't even read them. Just things like that. So it never had any consequences what this girl did. My daughter, now being quite the empath and very highly sensitive, so she took this worse than maybe another kid would have done. I don't know. But anyway, she ended up with the terrible PTSD from this experience. We had her see a psychologist for nearly 2 years. That really changed things around for her. She couldn't do whole classes after she left. Here we got what we call is child school up until they're 15, and then they go to different kind of schools where they can go to kind of college or more work related education. And she couldn't do her full program. She had to cut them in half and do 1 year over 2 years and things like that, because she couldn't focus and she had panic attacks, and this really, really set her back a lot. But fortunately, like Jenny said, she got to a point where she started loving on herself. And for her, that looked like doing things that she thought was fun and working out. She lifts weights. She's big now, strong, big and strong, and feels really good with herself. And she's very confident. She's taken an education. She's having her own apartment, living alone by her own choice. Yeah, things like that. So it's working out, but it's taken her a long time to get over that experience she had in her earlier years. And it just pains me that I knew so little about this, and we just called it bullying. We didn't even realize how serious it was. So yeah, mamas and papas, beware, it can happen anywhere. So if your kid comes home and say something, listen. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that your daughter has now come to a place where she can love on herself and feel good about who she is. And what she went through in school is probably a lot more common than we realize. It's more than just bullying. It's probably got a whole other name that I can't even wrap words to, because on the one hand, like, your daughter was pushed to the brink of she was pushed to the point of snapping, and yet they only found fault with her. You know what I mean? Like, even if the school tried to send letters to the other person's parent, like, they really pigeonholed your daughter and probably made it worse for her by calling her out on that, when it was a completely different situation, and she's probably held on to that too. So it wasn't just the bullying alone and the Jekyll and Hyde, if you will, of the other person. It was the combination of how the school responded to it, and the way that they didn't look out for her the same way that you were trying to. So
there was no help for her.
Yeah.
So it was hard for her to even tell anyone at the end. So I used to bring her alone with me for walks with the dogs, and I said, "Now I'm yours. If you want to share, you share. If not, we'll just go in silence." And she would be so angry, so frustrated, and it was really hard to watch. She was unhappy with herself. She was unhappy at school. She wanted to leave. She didn't want to leave. She was, it was changing all the time. So it's really hard for a parent to feel that you have no one to help you. We tried to talk to the parents too, but they're like, they were just like, our daughter is not doing anything wrong. She's just being her cute little self, Yeah. So it's hard to get through and to convince your own child that you matter, you're important, you're good enough, when everything around you is kind of making you a little island that you're all alone. So yeah.
Again, I'm so glad times are changing, because like, if you go way back, if you did something wrong at school and you got paddled for it, and you went home and told at home, you didn't dare, because you get paddled at home as well. So we've come a long way, baby. And we are realizing that victims get a deaf ear towards them. And you've seen a lot with the Me Too movement, as well as victims being blamed. And like, I love how Stina talks about, I don't care if you're naked in bed with your own husband, rape is rape. You can be raped by your own husband. Like, let's call things like they are, as Jenny says. So yeah, we're making progress. It is definitely keep your eyes and ears open, parents, and really listen and investigate.
Yeah, what strikes me, Dorrit, is that you share of her anger, and there's such big piece of confusion around being in this situation where you're always looking for the other person to make sense based on the way that you are. And people who are empathetic and they have that ability to care for people and empathize with them, it's so confusing when someone treats them this way. And it's like you're just looking for, like, where's the love? Where's the compassion? Where's the kindness? Where's the friendship that they say, that they use the words to say. And the way that you listen to her, like, that's the most important space that you can hold for someone to self-reflect and start accepting this person for who they are, so that they can be wise, so that they can establish their boundaries and come back to, as you were sharing, like, well, what do I want? How do I want to move forward and care for me? So I think that was such a big piece, that you were listening and holding that space for her to self-reflect.
Right. And I think it's important, Jenny, as you said, second wave of abuse, here in the private chat, second wave of abuse, like, as teachers, are you becoming the second wave of abuse? This little girl was gaslighting your daughter, Dorrit, and then the teachers went and gaslit her as well. So, and so did the girl's parents, obviously.
Just taking a moment to breathe. Stina, I'm coming down to you. I know you've been taking notes. I feel like I could see you scribbling there a little bit. What's coming up for you as we've been talking about PTSD and narcissism?
Well, Jenny stole one of my notes because apparently we're on the same page. I had kind, caring, compassionate, empathetic written down. Jenny just said those words almost exactly. On the topic of, and this comes for me on the topic of surprise, the element of surprise, right? The out of the blue thing. I have seen this in myself, and I've seen this in so many of my friends, that the thing that keeps us in the addictive cycle with the narcissist, because there is an emotional addiction, right? We have codependent behaviors and addictive behaviors to this up and down and up and down, and the adrenaline rush, and then the crash and the burnout, and it's very toxic. And the element of surprise is what keeps it going, because they do something and then we're shocked that they have yet again proven themselves to simply be exactly the person that they have always been. We can definitely, the tactics of a narcissist can make it so the love bombing, the grandiose behavior can kind of blind you at the beginning of a relationship, and then the insidious kind of control starts to come in. But when you start to notice those things, like, they do line up. They line up with the way that this person acts, the way they talk to you, the tone they use, the things that they, the behaviors. And yet we get that email, we get the text, they say something, they accuse us, they blame us, and we feel like it's a new thing. And that's what sends us into that spiral, right? Of, I have to solve this. And if you know anything about OCD, when I learned about OCD, the rumination and the obsession, like, if you add in like a little OCD with your codependency, which I think maybe all codependents have a little bit of that rumination and that obsession, and that, how can I solve this problem and what do I need to do? It's really, when you start to come out of that pattern, it's really challenging to pull yourself out of the surprise. But it comes from taking at face value what this person does and says, and saying, this is who they are. They are not going to change. It's not going to get better. They're not going to start giving me kindness, caring, compassion, and empathy, no matter how I ask for it, no matter how much pain I'm in, right? Like, the lengths that I have seen the victims of narcissistic abuse, the lengths that they go to display their pain, right? Whether it's panic attacks, whether it's suicidal ideation or attempts, whether, like they could be in dire circumstances, very clear to a normal, partner or friend that would be like, whoa, what's going on? Are you okay? And this person will be like, wow, you must be really having a hard time with something, like it's just like never about them. And it's you have a problem and you are the toxic one. And it's like, yes, you are, in a way we are participating in that dynamic, but it's that addiction. It's that like the subconscious, the nervous system, the practice patterns. And when we realize like, I'm never going to get those needs met here, no matter how many times I go to this person, they're not going to meet these needs. And they're going to keep the weird thing about narcissism. We think, oh, that's somebody who's, self-obsessed. And it's like, they don't want anyone to know them. So they actually make it all about everyone else. Like Jenny was saying, I'm blamed. So what's wrong with me? What do I need to fix? What do I need to do? And, I think that's really powerful to work on not being surprised by people's behaviors, to say, of course that's what they're saying. Of course that's how they're behaving. Of course that's a decision that they made. Like that's what makes sense. Their behavior makes sense because this is what they always do. And it really helps to help you detach from their behavior, because then it's no longer I did this and then they did this. It's like, no, this is what they do. This is how they behave. And then you get to decide how you want to react, respond, or, get the heck out of those situations and not engage in the first place is really the best way. And then another thing that I just wanted to touch on, because, Dorot's story about the bullying and the just as a parent, like it's so challenging to, Shell, you were saying like we are healing, we are making things better for the next generation, we're raising awareness, but ultimately we don't have control over the people that our kids are going to be influenced by. We can't control that. And so I have been thinking a lot about how I can protect my kids and equip my kids versus sheltering them. Because sheltering is, I'm going to keep you in this little box and make sure nothing bad ever happens to you. And that's just it's not realistic. Going back to, Dr. Jen's book, it doesn't build resilience. It doesn't build grit. It doesn't build these skills that you really need to go out into the world and be a successful, happy, healthy human. And so I have started to talk to my kids. I wrote this down because I've actually said this to my kids. I want you to learn your lessons with the least amount of harm done to you and to other people. So that doesn't mean we avoid hurt. It doesn't mean we avoid mistakes. It doesn't mean that other people are never going to, be nasty to you, bully you, any of those things. But like, how can we mitigate the harm being done, which is where the PTSD comes in, which is where, these long-term things that we have to deal with. But even when my kids were like toddlers, I remember having a conversation with somebody who said, I just want to be such a great parent that my kids never need therapy the way I have needed therapy. And I said, I just want to raise kids that know how to find a great therapist, because that to me is the skill of self-trust and the self-love and the self-care to say, I am able to get the help I need. I am capable of speaking up. I can, I can right the wrongs in my life. I can choose a new path. I can make a new decision. And that's okay if things get messed up. There are ways out, because that's what I think ultimately keeps us in addictive cycles and codependency, is that we don't actually know, believe, and trust that there is a way out. And there is a different way to relate to people and to relate to ourselves ultimately.
I love that, Stina, and a great therapist for them. In other words, knowing themselves so well that they would recognize who is a great therapist for them. And I love your story, how you picked your therapist based on, this is somebody I wouldn't be friends with. This is somebody, what was your little list of, you knew
Yeah,
this is the
it
person?
was like I wanted somebody who had a different perspective. And, there are things that have come up, little clues. Therapists don't talk about themselves, but there are little clues that I'm like, oh, we totally don't see eye to eye on that, like that topic or that, political issue or whatever. She's such a skilled therapist, and she is very professional, and she is able to give me literally, I feel like she's looking at this thing from a different direction. So then I'm not getting reinforced the same ways that I think about things. And I had a preliminary call with another therapist, and I was like, oh, let's go have a drink, let's go out for coffee. And I was like, no, I don't want a friend vibe. I want a professional who is going to give me something that I can't give myself yet. Like I want to kind of like install a new voice in my head, and my kids have actually been able to say, like, I think I would like to see a therapist. They had a therapist during the pandemic for about a year, and then we stopped for a while. They were doing pretty good, and then they've both been able to say, like, I just would like somebody else to talk to. I need that support again. And and they have, 3 very emotionally intelligent, very present, very supportive parents in their lives. Like, we are on top of all of the things, and they just want that support. And it makes me teary because I think we all deserve to have that level of confidence to just say, this is what I want, this is what I need. And it doesn't mean what I'm getting isn't enough. It's just like, yeah, I deserve that, and I can have that support.
If we think about like each of our stories and our journeys, like we've each done for ourselves in our own way exactly what you've described, Stina. Like we've trusted ourselves enough to get out, to change our situation if we didn't like something, like however hard it was for us to like break the cycle and that codependency, to change our situation. We still trusted ourselves to know that we deserved something better, and we were going to go and find the support that we needed to do that. And so I think we're all great examples of how we've overcome and worked through and worked on ourselves to be better for ourselves, but for others too. And so I was really thinking about each of our stories as you were sharing, not just like what you've taught your kids, and you're teaching us too, the same way that we're all teaching each other. And I love that for us. And I think it's great that we get to be these role models, not just for kids, but for everybody and anybody who's watching that might need to hear our different points of view and our different stories. Because yes, we've all gone through it, but our stories are uniquely different. And so thank you for being our teacher and our guide. And thank you, Linda, Jenny, and Dorit as well for being our teacher and our guide too. We've covered so many things about PTSD and narcissism today. There's certainly more things coming up for me, but I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So we could probably have these conversations separately or on another live. Until next time, I'm going to say bye for now. But before I do that, I just want to remind you that if you feel like you want to have a high vibe conversation of your own with one of us, please feel free to schedule using the link below. We are available to you. Please don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn or wherever you can find us on another social platform. If you want to catch up on previous conversations, you can subscribe here at the YouTube channel seen on the screen. And we will be sure to be bringing you more high vibe conversations to come. We've got a special guest coming up next week. You don't want to miss it. So this is High Vibe Conversations, and we're saying bye for now.